Okay, hello everyone. Today I'm going to be sharing some deck profile for Lianorn Masques, the new Lianorn support card from DBT10. So to start it off, I'll explain about the Masques mechanics. This is the new mechanics from DBT10. Most of your group, what you can basically do is, if this order card is in the drop zone and your opponent's Vanguard is at grade 3 or higher, you can reveal one Masques unit from your hand and write it. Masques goes to soul, and if you haven't Persona Right during this turn, you will activate Persona Right. So you can get Persona Right as early as turn 3 going second. Now what does Lianorn Masques do? So what she do is, when she attacks, you can choose 3 of your background rear guards, boost. Then at the end of the battle, if you boost using 3 rear guards, you can counter blast 1 to restand 2 rear guards. So what's the difference between this and the old Lianorn is that you can restand any rear guards, not just back row. So now you can stand your front row rear guards and swing for 5 times. So with that being said, you need strong front row rear guards with high power so that you can ask for high shield value. Now, usually right now the strongest card to use is Tightline Dragon, and what the card do is that if you Persona Right during this turn, you can Soul Blast 1, this unit, and one of your other unit gains 10k. So at this point, with one Tightline Dragons and assuming the other is a grade 2 rear guard, you will get a 30k Vanguard swings. And then at the end of the battle, control blast 1, restand 2 rear guards, and you will get another 30k and 30k. So that's asking for 20k shield 4 times, assuming you got no trigger and your opponent got no damage triggers. Of course, if you have the Tightline Dragons, you can also use the other one's skill, Soul Busting 1, giving another 10k and 10k. Now this swings for 40k, Vanguard swing, restand 40k. So gives high firepower if you manage to make a good line in the front row. Now we're moving on to the actual deck profile, the list. So let's start with the right line. For right line, I'm using Roroa's right line and the booster Lianorn. Starting with the grade 1. So the reason we're using the grade 1 Roroa instead of Gracia, Lianorn's right line, is that going second, if you go to Roroa, you're going to immediately get a plan token behind the Vanguard. So this makes a 13k column, and usually your opponent will no guard a 13k Vanguard swing. Comparing to Gracia going second will be a 8k attack, and there are chances that your opponent will guard with 15k shield. Now this is important because this deck needs to push damage so that during turn 3 or turn 4, you want your opponent at damage 3 damage or 4 damage. Especially going second, you need to rush hard, so any extra body is really needed as soon as possible. Moving on to the grade 2, we're using Roroa's grade 2, and the reason is also the same. So we get another body Why are we not using Gracia and Rectina? Simply because it's too slow. So if you use Rectina here, this will become a 15k swing, and it will only give you body when you ride the Lianorn as Soul plus 1 or 1 grade 1. And this deck doesn't really have a good grade 1 on the field, so we don't really need Rectina skill. Compared to the old build where you need Prosper, Lianorn's promo card, on the field as soon as possible, this deck doesn't really need a good back row, so we're using Roroa. Also, just by making this column, you can put a grade 2 and this becomes a 15k swings, and you can put grade 1 and this will become a 13k and possibly 18k, and we will talk about later. And for the grade 3, we're using the booster Lianorn simply because her skill enables us to counter plus 1, draw 1, and call 1 from hand or discard 1 card. Draw is really needed in this deck because Lianorn asks for a full field, and right now there are so many removal, so we need all the plus that we can get. And also, the decks have no other drawing cards. If there are any plus, the plus will be to the field, so you need to draw as much as possible. Now moving on, we're going with the grade 1 selection. I'm using 4 perfect guards. Why are we not using Elementaria? It's because Lianorn needs a full field, and there will be times where you can actually close the game, but because you don't have any booster, you cannot use Lianorn's skill. So we need as many boosters as we can get. Now we're running 4 Dianza. The reason we're playing Dianza is that she's on place from hand, counter plus 1, revive 1 card from drop zone. It's a plus 1, but it only works when your Vanguard is grade 3. But it's still a plus 1. And the second reason we're playing this is because it gains 5k if your back row grade 1 or less regards is 2 or more. So at the situation where we're still at grade 2 Roroa, we can actually call Dianza, and she gains 5k, and this will become a 18k column. Going first, this will ask for 15k guard. Going second, this will be 10k guard. Still good. Still make a good line. And also, this also enable us for grade 2 gaming against Tritex. Moving on to the next grade 1, we're running 4 Mushroom. Mushroom is one of the best card right now in Stoichia. So you put this card to soul, gain 2 plant tokens. The deck doesn't really need a good back row, so we just create plant tokens, and you can actually do this move in grade 1. So going second, you can call Mushroom, goes to soul, call 2 plant tokens, and this swings for 10k, this swings for 15k. Give you a good rush during the early game. And next in grade 1, I'm playing 2 Amelia. So Amelia is a counter charger at the end of the battle. I can Soul Blast 1, retire this card, and counter charge 1. So combining it with Lianorn, Lianorn Masques, according to the anime, you can actually add 0 counter blast. assuming we don't have any open counterblast, you can actually swings. At the end of the battle, use Amelia's skill to counter charge, then using Lianorn's skill to counterblast, giving you the allowance with counterblast. Now, these two cards can be used with other cards, but I still prefer using Amelia simply because it gives you a sense of security, so that when you don't have enough counterblast, you just revive her with Masques skill. Also, another thing to note is that this is a 13k on Masques, so if your Vanguard is Lianorn Masques, this gains 5k. That makes it that we run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 13k grade 1, and this will be important and I will touch upon it later. Now that's it for the grade 1s. We're moving on to the grade 2s. For grade 2, we're running currently the best card in the pool to run for Lianorn Masques, for Tightline Dragons. So we're running Tightline because it gives 10k to itself and 10k to one other unit, making 2 of your front row column big, and you want them big to withstand with Lianorn Masques. But the problem is that you need a persona turn for it to activate, so do be careful about that, because without persona, the power of this deck is quite low. Next up, we're playing 4 Depth Evaluate, Searcher for the Mass Order. And the reason why we're not running 4 Masques, but we're running the Searcher, is because the Searcher also creates Dragon Tree marker. So if your Vanguard is a Masques, the unit above this marker gains 5k. This makes a good number. So for example, let's say we're on Masques and we have 1 markers, assuming the back rows are all golden, since we've just called the Evaluate. And let's say I'm using the Masques skill. So Lianorn Masques skill have an effect that is I can remove 1 Lianorn other than Lianorn Masques from the game, reviving 1 grade 1 and retiring 1 of my opponent rear guards. Let's say I revive an Amelia. So this will make she gains 5k due to her skill, 5k due to the markers, 10k from persona, and this makes a 28 column. What's so good about 28 is that you can swing 28, you can swing with Vanguard, then counterblast 1, stand 2 rear guards, then this swings for another 28, so that's a 20k guard, 20k guard. Unfortunately, this is quite small, this is 15. But if this is a tight line, then that's a whole different story, because this will gain 10k, this will gain 10k. Now this is 38, this is 30. So the markers enables your 13k grade 1s to hit higher number. I really do recommend putting grade 1 in above the markers, because it makes good column. But grade 2 is also fine, you don't have to push it that way, because 10k and 15k still change the power line. Okay, moving on. So where was it again? So for tight lines, and for evaluate. And that's it for the grade 2. Moving on with the grade 3s. We're running 2 of the old Lianorn outside from the right deck, so including the right deck, we're running 3. And then we're running 2 Masques of Hydrogram. And then, of course, we're running 4 of the Lianorn Masques. So the reason for this is that you don't need 4 Masques because we're playing the Grade 2 Searcher. But running 1 Masque gives you the possibility of it falling to the damage zone and unable to ride to the Masque, Lianorn Masque. So we play 2. You don't usually play the Masque. You use it as Lianorn's boss, so you discard the Masque, except when you don't have Lianorn Masque in hand. For Lianorn Masque is a must because because this is a persona deck, so we want to increase our chance of getting a persona right as much as possible. Now the reason we're playing 2 Lianorn in the main deck is because if you ride into the Masque without having a persona right for the next turn, personally, in my opinion, I think it's better if you just persona ride the normal Lianorn. You still get the draw from Lianorn's effect, and then you get the triple drive, digging for the next Lianorn Masque, and still pushing the opponent. Because if you fail to push during the Masque turn, and then next turn you don't persona ride, your column is going to be really weak. So I think the normal persona ride is still usable, and of course, considering Lianorn Masque skill, it gives you more cards to banish or remove from game in order to revive one and retire one. And this is also quite important because currently we're in the meta with so many removal, and once you get to the Lianorn boss, you don't plus. This deck doesn't plus at all after you ride to the Masque. So we plus from this. Of course, you can also just choose to discard this as a right fodder, because this will become a plus during Lianorn Masque turn. Going to the trigger, we're running Stoic Chaos over trigger, of course. 2 draw, 1 heal, 1 crit, and front triggers, still good. We're running 4 draws, so the reason I'm running 4 draw triggers is because this deck needs full field and you need Tightline Dragons to push. So it's really unit reliant, and you want as much unit as possible. Also enables you to kinda like rush early during the grade 1, grade 2 turns. Hopefully you get a draw for damage trigger and replenish your units. Running 4 heals, just using the normal heals. Considering changing them to counter heal according to your meta, and we're running 7 crits. Of course, you can use the effect critical triggers, but personally I don't think the deck needs it because soul is not the problem. So that's it for the deck list. Moving on with the strength and weakness of the decks. So the strength of this deck is that before you go to the Masque, like for example, you have this card in hand, you can actually use the Lianorn skill first to control +1, draw 1, and call 1 unit. And then you use the Masques, hopefully getting the Lianorn Masques or DBT wallet. Do not forget that you can actually take the dragon tree. And then using this Masques skill to persona right and draw 1. So don't forget to use Lianorn's draw skill. And the best part of this deck is of course when you have 2 tight lines, giving you a 30k boost to your front row. Usually, as the game progress, you will have 1 marker, so this will be a 40 and 45 line. Back row are usually tokens, but you can use tight line skill to solve +1, and then you use your Masques skill to remove Lianorn from play and reviving 1 red 1, retiring 1 of your opponent rear guards. Well, this doesn't really change the power line, but it gives you the option of going for attacks. So for example, your opponent is at 3 damage, you can actually swing like this. So 45, then let's say the opponent no guard and they're at 4 damage. If you swing this, the opponent will definitely no guard and probably get a damage trigger, but you can also beat them like going to Vanguard swing first, then counter +1 and resist 2 rear guards. So you still get 4 big swings, and I think that's also okay. You don't have to push for 5 swings every turn in my opinion. Especially if you don't have tight lines, you don't have to push yourself to swing 5 times. And the other strength of the decks is that it can recover quite, not that easy, but still quite good. So let's say we have just got our field wiped by Gandeva. And we're right into Lianorn Masques, but now we need to fill our field right. So what you can actually do is, hopefully you have Dianza in hand. You call Dianza. Dianza's skill reviving 1 rear guards, or you can actually call it here. You use a tight line skill, so blasting the normal Lianorn, giving 10k. Using Lianorn Masques skill, removing from play Lianorn and calling the mushroom in your drop zone, goes to soul, create 2 tokens, and now you only need to fill 1 more board. So this is 1 card. Yeah, you only use 1 card from hand. This goes from drop, this comes from drop. Only have to invest 1 more card. So if you have any Dianza in hand, keep them. Dianza also serves as the second copy of Tightline Dragons. So for example, your opponent is at 5 damage and you only have 1 Tightline and 1 Dianza in hand. If you have any spare counter blast, you just call using her skill, call another Tightline and Soul Blast 2 to give this power. So the deck is quite flexible. It can adapt with the meta, I think, and power isn't that much of a problem if you manage your persona and tightline correctly. Now on to the weakness of the decks. The weakness of this deck is that, so let's say we're going second, you go to Lianorn, you play the order at Masques, you go Lianorn Masques, opponent is at 2 or 3 damage, then let's see, you got really lucky, hold 2 tight lines, 2 plan tokens from Roroa, and use Lianorn Masques skill to revive 1 grade 1. And so this will become really big red persona using skill twice, then becomes quite big. And then you try to push, right? 40-40, Vanguard swing, card plus 1, resistance 2, 40-40. The opponent survive, and then you take damage, and is managed to survive, and then you stand, you draw, you don't have a persona. What happened right now when you don't have persona is nothing happens. This is 10k. You cannot use its skill, you cannot use, you don't have the power boost from persona. Yeah, this is just a 10k card, and we don't have any other cards. As far as I know, in Stoichia, there are many options that gives you big power in the front row, other than Clapping Dragon, but it costs Counter Blast and then it's another grade 3. But I guess that could be an option. But with the current builds, if you don't persona right, the deck's power just plummets down. So my tips is that don't go to the Masques immediately, especially if you don't have the second copy ready in your hand. Also, many people fail to realize, but you can actually go, let's say we're going second, or going first is also fine. So we persona right using Lianorn, using her skill counter plus 1, draw 1, call 1, and then you can actually still use the Masques skill. So the Masques only says that if your Vanguard doesn't have a Masques name, you can refill 1 grade 3 Masques from hand, write it as 10, this card goes to soul, and if you didn't persona right this turn, you do persona right. But if you persona right, it's still fine. So what I want to say is basically that if you have Masques and Lianorn in hand, it's better to just persona right. If you manage to draw another Masques, then you go to Masques. But if you didn't manage to draw it, you just swing with normal Lianorn, triple drive, hoping to check another Lianorn Masques, and you go to the Masques at the next turn. But yeah, that's the biggest weakness of this deck. It doesn't have any power at all if you don't persona right. So this is actually a persona right deck. So unlike Zorga, where you want to use the Masques immediately, or Gradual, this deck wants to persona right every turn, and Masques is just an extra copy of persona right. So you don't have to push yourself and go to Masques immediately. Now let's talk about some alternative. What other card can you use for this deck? So first of all, the elephant in the room, I guess, is Clapping Dragon. Clapping Dragon is a 13k on plays from hand. If your back row is 3 or more, counter plus 1, draw 1, and if your opponent's Vanguard is at grade 3, it gains 10k. So that's 23k attackers, 33 with persona. Gives good number, but unfortunately the number of grade 3s in the deck is already quite high. So I don't know if you still want to bring it because it will lower the shield value. Other cards you can bring is Here Knight Flashy. So this is one of my personal favorite, and I've actually tried testing with this card. So what this do is that when this card attack your opponent's grade 3 or more vanguards, it gains 5k per tokens. So what's so good about this card is that usually we will have 2 tokens, let's say another random grade 1 and something like this. So if we count the powers during Persona right turns, this will be 10k from Persona. This gains 5k per tokens, and this will swings 30 alone. If you have markers, this is a 35 column. 35 is already quite high, but if you manage to make 3 tokens, this will become a 40k column. And 40k column equals to having 2 tight lines. So you can actually try to use this card. Unfortunately, it's quite hard to make consistent 3 print tokens feel, but I think this card has some potential. And also another reason to consider bringing her is that if you don't Persona right, so let's say she's on a marker, 15k, then 3 tokens means another 15. This becomes a 30k columns. So even if you don't Persona, you still get a 30k attacks, Vanguard swing, freestand, 30k. Even better if you have 2. So 25 and 30 without Persona. And yeah, the problem is that 1, you need 3 tokens, quite hard. 2 is also fine, but it doesn't make good number if you don't Persona. And the second problem is actually quite funny. We need the Soul Blast. Why do we need the Soul Blast? Because we use Mushroom. Mushroom goes to Soul. And usually if we get board wipe next turn, I want to revive the Mushroom to gain 2 tokens. But if we're running Freshe instead of Tightline, we cannot get the Mushroom out of the Soul. So ironically, we need the Soul Blast. Another alternative that you can use is actually this card. So this is a triple R from DBT10 Ara series. It says that on place from hand, counter blast 1, soul blast 1, mill top 3 cards from your deck, and you choose, if you choose a grade 3 with the same name as your Vanguard, add it to hand. If you choose grade 2 or less, call it to the rear guard. What this do is that you can secure your next Persona, because if you have Persona right, you just call her, Soul Blast the Persona, add to hand. Or you can also just call tight lines. But even better is that it mills 3 cards, giving you more option, more toolbox in your drop zone, because the deck badly needs rear guards. In the game where you don't draw tight lines, it will be quite hard, honestly. So that's an option. For 3 slots in this deck, I think you have 4 slots that you can play with, and that is the slots for the counter charger and the persona. This is, I think, the weakest link in the deck. And also, arguably Dianza. Still bring Dianza, but don't bring 4. Yeah, I guess that's it for the profile. Now for some hand tests to just show a little bit of how the deck works. And unique to the Masques decks, I think, is that sometimes you find it quite hard going first because you have so many combo pieces in your hand, but you cannot use it yet. So the timing to go to Lianorn Masques is really crucial. I think that will make or break the deck. Assuming we're going first, because going second is such an advantage to Masques decks, so let's assume that we're going first. Now, for Lianorn, I won 1 grade 1 and 1 master at least. So I'm going to mulligan 4. Definitely not a good hand. Probably didn't manage to shuffle it quite well. Now going first. This is not exactly a bad hand, so draw. Now we have 2 Masques. Basically, we don't need to use the order anymore. We just discard it to right. Call 1 plain tokens and pass your turn. Take the damage, no guard. Hit power to Vanguard. And draw. Now, I will probably discard the Depth's Area because we don't really need more than 1. Fight Roroa gains a plain token. Then you call EDA, Counterblast, Soul Blast. Now this is also quite important. So if you don't have any grade 1s, it's important to Soul Blast the grade 1 Roroa because you can revive it later with Lianorn Masques. Gain 1 marker at the order. Marker placement is also quite important, but I usually put the marker on the column with red tokens because later I can call 8k in the other column, and if this is a 10k rear guards, still make good numbers. Now we just swing 15 to Vanguard. Good, that's a great one that we need for turn 3 Lianorn. Now we just take the damage, no guard. And going through our turn, stand and draw. Now that we have 3 Lianorn Masques, this is quite rare actually. Probably didn't manage to shuffle it. You just discard the order to write Lianorn. Then counterblast the mushroom. Draw 1. Call. Don't really need to push for 3 columns. Just swing Soul Blast 1, discarding 1, press 3, triple drive, with power, stand 2 rear guards. This swings with, well, if your opponent perfect guard this is a 3 crits. And then you just take all the damage, no guard. Yeah, let's see you perfect guard and 30k guard. And now it's our turn game, stand and draw. We don't ride and just use Lianorn skill first. 100+1, draw 1, call one. Now we use the Masques. Refill from hand. Treat this as persona, right? One row. And of course, this is actually not a really good line because with persona, even with persona, this doesn't make good numbers. So this is a 23, this is a 25. If the opponent is still at 3 or 4 damage, I will not actually push with 5 attacks. I will probably go with 28, Vanguard swings, Twin drive, do heal, give power to the great ones, use Lianorn skill, control +1, we stand here and here. Now this swings for 33 and this swings for 30. Still make good columns even though it's just 4 attacks. And we just take some damage. Guard. Now you will see that the problem with this deck is that when you don't have any units, the deck just doesn't work as well. Okay, now we have a Tightline in hand, we have Lianorn in hand. So what we can actually do right now is don't just go to persona right, but we can write the Lianorn first. Use Lianorn skill, draw 1, call 1. Now we use the Masques. Since we didn't persona right this turn, this becomes a persona right. And then we use Tightline skill. So placing 1, giving 10k, using Lianorn Masques skill for example, to revive another Amelia. And this makes a persona, Tightline, markers, persona, Tightline, and her own skill. This makes 35 and 33 columns. 33, 35, Vanguard swing, Twin drive, and 1+1. That's how the game usually progress. The takeaway I think is that if you want to play Lianorn Masques, try to time it well when to write the Lianorn Masques, because if you didn't manage to get another persona right for the next turn, the power of your field will drop really harshly. And I think that's it for the video. This is my first time creating an English deck profile. Do excuse me if I use bad English because English is not my native language. Please do like and subscribe if it helps, and do comment away what do you think about Lianorn, because I'm also trying to learn from other people how to use Lianorn, and I'm not a competitive player, so please take it with a grain of salt. I guess that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.